The royal dragon palace stood high above the clouds, shining like a burning star. Its halls were wide, its towers strong, and its guards always alert. But today, something was wrong inside the palace. Something terrifying. Something no dragon elder had ever faced before. The young dragon children's maw, bright-scaled and full of energy, had stopped eating for 3 days. At first, the elders thought it was a small problem. Maybe the hatchlings were simply tired of the same food. Maybe they wanted attention. Maybe they were playing. But on the second and third day, the truth became clear. The children were not playing at all. Their wings looked weak. Their claws trembled. Their glowing eyes had lost their shine. This was not hunger. This was danger. Every corner of the palace was filled with fear. The royal dragon chefs worked day and night. They used ancient recipes passed down for thousands of years. They cooked rare meats from far planets, crystal spices that sparkled in the air, and glowing soups that were usually loved by all young dragons. But still, the kids refused every dish. They turned away, pushed plates aside, or closed their eyes with sadness. The head chef, a tall dragon named Vorsk, slammed his huge cleaver on the table. Impossible. He roared, smoke rising from his nose. Our food is the best in the galaxy. There must be something wrong with the children, not the chefs. But deep inside, even Vorsk felt fear. Dragon children were the future of the clan. If they grew weak, the whole clan would suffer. Warriors. Elders and servants lined up outside the kitchen, whispering, worrying, and trying to understand why the young ones refused to eat. Inside the dining hall, the small dragons lay curled up on soft mats. Their tails barely moved. Their tiny growls sounded like soft whimpers. One little dragon tried to stand but fell back on her side. An elder rushed to her and gently lifted her head. "It's getting worse," the elder whispered. The king himself arrived, his footsteps shaking the hall. He looked at his children with pain in his eyes. "Find a solution," he commanded. "Bring every chef, healer, and expert from every corner of the galaxy." Everyone obeyed. Alien chefs from other planets arrived with strange dishes. Healers mixed medicines. Scientists took samples. Nothing worked. The children refused every smell, every flavor, every texture. Their bodies needed food, but their hearts wanted something else, something no one could guess. And then the guards entered with someone unexpected. A human. His name was Evan. A simple man working in the palace repair team. He was not a warrior, not a chef, not a healer. Just an ordinary human who fixed machines, cleaned vents, and checked wires. The head guard bowed to the king. "Your Majesty, the human asked permission to observe the kitchen. He thinks he may be able to help." The room fell silent. A human helping dragons. In the royal kitchen, Vorsk, the head chef, exploded with laughter. A human. What will he do? Cook with tiny pans and little spoons. The other chefs laughed with him, but the king did not laugh. Instead, he watched the children again, weak, thirsty, and tired. "Let him try," the king said quietly. "We have tried everything else." Everyone in the hall turned to look at Evan. He felt small under their heavy stares, but did not step back. He walked slowly toward the children. One of the youngest dragons, a small blue-scaled girl, lifted her head just a little and looked at him with tired eyes. Evan knelt beside her. "Hey there," he whispered softly. "You must be hungry. But the food doesn't feel right, does it?" The little dragon blinked, as if understanding every word. She gave the smallest nod. Evan stood up and looked at the elders and chefs. "May I see the kitchen?" The chefs frowned. The elders hesitated. But the king nodded. Evan entered the great royal kitchen, where massive pots boiled and glowing flames danced under heavy metal pans. The smell of spice was strong, almost burning. The plates looked beautiful, but something felt wrong. Very wrong. He watched how they cooked. He tasted a tiny piece of the food, and then Evan said the words no one expected. The food is amazing, but it's not made for children. It's too strong, too rough, too heavy. They need something soft, something warm, something simple. Vorsk growled loudly. Human food. You want to feed dragons human food? Evan didn't argue. He just looked back toward the dining hall where the tiny dragons lay weak and silent. They need comfort, he said. Not power. Comfort. And in that moment, the king's eyes widened. Hope faint, but alive returned. The crisis was far from over. But the human had just changed the story. The royal kitchen was hotter than any human place Evan had ever seen. Flames rose from stone pits, metal pans glowed red, and giant pots shook from the pressure of boiling soups. The air smelled of powerful spice so strong that Evan's eyes watered the moment he stepped inside. 2 dragon chefs smirked when they saw him wipe his face. He cannot even stand the smell, one whispered. He will faint before he cooks. Another laughed. Evan ignored their words. He stood still for a moment and simply observed. The dragons cooked fast, aggressively, almost like warriors fighting a battle. They tossed heavy spices, slammed meat onto burning metal, and stirred cauldrons with long chains. Everything they made looked impressive, but not gentle, not soft. Not for children. He watched the head chef, Vorsk, slap huge chunks of glowing red meat onto a metal slab. The meat sizzled instantly, releasing sparks. Dragons around him cheered at the sound. To them, this meant strength and power. But to a small dragon child, this food must look scary. Vorsk spotted Evan, watching, and flared his wings. Human, he growled. Do you know anything about dragon food? Our recipes are older than your species. Evan nodded politely. I respect your skills. Your food is incredible. But it is not for children. Not when they are sick or scared. The kitchen went silent. Several chefs hissed. A few puffed smoke. You dare insult us? Schwan shouted. Evan raised his hands calmly. No. I am only saying, maybe the problem is not your cooking. Maybe the children need something that feels safe to them. Something simple. Vorsk stepped closer, towering over him. His shadow covered Evan's whole body. Then cook, he challenged. Show us your human wisdom. All eyes turned to Evan. He took a slow breath. Fine, but I need ingredients. Vorsk rolled his eyes. Take whatever you want. Evan walked to the food shelves. But everything. There was strange glowing fruits, crystal vegetables, spiky roots, neon grains, and meats from creatures he didn't recognize. He shook his head politely. I need basic things, he said. Soft grains, mild vegetables, broth. Plain meat, nothing glowing. The dragon chefs looked as if he had asked for snow in the middle of a volcano. What is plain meat? One asked, confused. This is a royal kitchen, another snapped. We do not cook simple food. But the king's voice echoed from behind them all. Give him what he needs. The chefs froze. No one disobeyed the king. Reluctantly, they brought him a few bags of basic ingredients items usually ignored and stored in the back of the kitchen because they were too boring. Evan smiled. Perfect. He washed the vegetables carefully. The dragons watched, confused. Why is he touching everything gently? One muttered, why is he cutting so slowly? Another asked, Vorsk folded his arms. This looks like food for infants. Evan nodded. Exactly. He set a pot of water to boil. Instead of thunder flames, he used a small, steady fire. Instead of throwing ingredients aggressively, he placed them in the pot slowly. A soft smell filled the aircom. Warm, familiar, something that reminded the dragons of nests. childhood, and comfort. The chefs stared. "What is this smell?" One whispered, "It feels peaceful." Another said, quietly. Evan continued his work. He added vegetables, grains, and a tiny bit of meat, cut into soft pieces. Steam rose gently, not violently like the dragon's dishes. When he stirred the pot, the soup glowed faintly, not from magic, but from warmth. Vors, Kay came close and sniffed. His nostrils twitched. "It smells simple." "It smells safe," Evan corrected. A small crowd of servants gathered at the doorway. Even elders peeked inside. They whispered among themselves, surprised to feel calm for the first time in days. Finally, Evan took the pot off the fire. He placed the soup into shallow stone bowls designed for young dragons. The smell drifted through the hallways. Something magical happened. Tiny footsteps echoed in the distance. The dragon children, weak, tired, but awake. Following the smell, they appeared at the doorway, small wings dragging behind them. Their eyes were half closed, but their noses twitched. One of them stepped forward. Little blue-scaled girl, the same child Evan had spoken to earlier. She let out a soft, curious growl. Vorsk looked at Evan. "Are you sure this will work?" "No," Evan admitted. "But they came here on their own. That means something." He placed a bowl gently in front of the blue-scaled child. She sniffed it. The entire kitchen went still. Even the fires seemed to quiet down. She lowered her head, opened her tiny mouth, and took one small bite. Evan held his breath. The chefs watched. The elders leaned forward, and then the little dragon took another bite, and another, and another. Her scales brightened. Her wings twitched. Her eyes widened as if she recognized this feeling: warmth, safety, comfort. A deep silence filled the kitchen. Then 3 more dragon children rushed forward and began eating from the other bowls, their tails shaking gently. The kitchen erupted with gasps and cries. Warsk's eyes widened with shock. By the flames, they are eating. The king, who had silently followed the children, placed a hand on Evan's shoulder. "Human," he said softly, "you may have just saved my family." But Evan shook his head. "We are just beginning. They need more than one meal." The king smiled. "Then you will cook again." The dragon chefs stared at Evan, some angry, some embarrassed, but many hopeful. For the first time, dragons saw a human not as weak, but as someone who could help their future. And the real story was just starting. The moment the dragon children tasted Evan's food, the entire kitchen froze. The fires crackled softly. The metal pans trembled from the heat, and every dragon held its breath. No one dared to move. No one dared to speak. The little blue-scaled dragon girl continued eating, her tiny claws gently tapping the bowl as if afraid the food might disappear. Her eyes brightened with each bite, and her weak tail slowly began to move. Evan watched her with quiet hope in his eyes. Then something even more surprising happened. Another hatchling, a small green-scaled one, walked slowly from behind the pillars. He had been the weakest of all the children. For days he had refused every dish. But now he sniffed the air and crawled toward the bowl closest to him. His legs shook. His wings dragged. But he did not stop. The elders whispered anxiously, "Will he eat? Can he taste it? What if he rejects it again?" The little dragon leaned forward and took a tiny lick of the warm broth. His eyes widened instantly. He looked at Evan, blinked twice, then dipped his head into the bowl and started drinking eagerly. A soft gasp moved through the room. 2 hatchlings eating. 2 miracles happening right in front of them. Vorsk, the head chef, stepped backward in shock. "Impossible," he whispered. "How? How can human food work when our ancient recipes failed?" Evan stayed humble. "It's not magic. It's comfort. These little ones are scared. They don't want powerful food. They want gentle food. Food that feels safe. The king nodded slowly, deep sadness turning into relief. For days we forced strength on them, but what they needed was peace. The other dragon children, hearing the sound of eating and smelling the warm steam, gathered around the bowls. Some still hesitated, unsure whether they should trust this new, soft-smelling dish. Evan crouched down, making himself smaller, less threatening. "It's okay," he whispered softly. "You can try. It won't hurt." One purple hatchling sniffed him directly, touching his hand with her nose. She let out a tiny, hopeful chirp and dipped her mouth into the bowl. Her small wings lifted slightly as if she felt life coming back to her body. Within seconds, 5 hatchlings were eating, then 6, then all 8. The entire palace felt like it. Exhaled for the first time in days. A young dragon chef, who had earlier mocked Evan, now stood with tears forming in his glowing eyes. "They are finally eating," he said quietly. "I never thought I would see this." Vorsk swallowed hard. "Human, I was wrong. I thought our food was the best. But your food? Your food saved them." Evan shook his head. They simply needed something made with care, not fear. The king stepped forward and bowed his head slightly, a gesture rare for a dragon ruler. "Evan of Earth," he said, "you have done more in 1 hour than all our finest cooks did in 3 days." The human bowed back, unsure how to respond. "I'm just glad the kids are okay." But the moment of peace ended quickly. One of the elders stepped forward, his voice tense. "The children are eating now, but what about later? What if they refuse food again tomorrow?" The room grew serious. They were right. 1 meal was a start. But would the hatchlings keep eating? Evan looked at the simmering pot. "I will cook more. And I will teach your chefs. They can learn human-style comfort food. It's not difficult. It just requires patience." The dragons exchanged uncertain looks. Some were proud creatures who had never followed anyone's instructions, especially not a human's. But after watching the hatchlings recover so quickly, even they felt admiration. The king nodded firmly. "Very well. From this moment, the human will cook daily until the children fully recover." Vorsk sighed but bowed his head respectfully. "I will learn from him, even if it hurts my pride." Evan smiled, trying to lighten the mood. "Don't worry. Humans burn food all the time. Pride burns worse." Some dragons laughed, a rare sound in the royal kitchen. But outside the room, someone was not laughing. A shadowy figure stood behind a column, watching Evan with burning eyes. It was Ravkar, the most ambitious young chef in the palace. He had always wanted to become the next head chef. He believed power came from strong flames and intense flavors. Seeing the human being praised made his pride crack like stone under pressure. He muttered softly, "A human will not replace us. I will not allow it." Then he disappeared into the shadows. Back inside the kitchen, the hatchlings finished their bowls and made small chirping sounds, their version of happy laughter. A few even climbed onto Evan's legs, rubbing their heads against him like grateful little pets. Evan gently patted their backs. "You're welcome." He whispered. The elders saw this and felt something they had never felt before. Respect for a human. But none of them knew that danger was already growing. Not against the children, but against the human who had saved them. For the first time in days, the royal dragon palace felt alive again. The tiny hatchlings, once weak and silent, now chirped softly, their small wings fluttering as they finished the last drops of Evan's soup. The air around the kitchen warmed with relief. Elders whispered blessings. Even the stone walls seemed to relax, but no one felt the change more deeply than the king. He stood near the doorway, his massive form usually rigid and stern. But now his shoulders lowered as he watched his children regain their strength. Their eyes glowed again, not with fear or pain, but with gentle warmth. Evan stood nearby, unsure what to do. Humans were not used to royal attention, especially not from dragons. He wiped his hands on a cloth, trying to stay humble. But he couldn't stop smiling at the little dragons as they playfully pushed each other away from the bowls. One hatchling. The blue-scaled girl climbed onto Evan's foot and curled up there like a cat. The palace guards gasped. "No one touches royalty," one whispered fearfully. But the king raised his hand. "Let her. She understands something we did not." The chefs and elders looked at the human with new eyes, full of respect, surprise, and a kind of fear. If a human could earn the love of the future dragon rulers, then his existence suddenly mattered in a way no one expected. But admiration was not the only emotion in the room. Jealousy simmered like boiling water from behind a stack of glowing spice jars. Ravkar watched with clenched claws. His wings twitched with rage as each dragon child nuzzled the human. He had trained his whole life to be noticed, to be respected, to be the future head chef. Yet a simple human with soft food and gentle hands had stolen the moment that Ravkar believed should have been his. He whispered darkly, "Dragons bow to power, not weakness. I will show them who deserves honor." But for now, he stayed silent. The elders' verdicte group of elders gathered around the king, their old scales shimmering with uncertainty. One stepped forward, his horns decorated with silver rings. "Your Majesty, the hatchlings have accepted the human's food. This is good, but it is also troubling." The king tilted his head. "Troubling? Why?" "Because if the young ones only accept human meal, then what will we feed them tomorrow? Next week? Next cycle? Will our ancient recipes become useless?" Another elder added quietly, "If dragon children prefer human comfort, what does that say about our traditions?" Murmurs filled the air. Dragons valued tradition more than treasure. Changing their ways felt dangerous. Evan looked uncomfortable. "I don't want to replace tradition. I just wanted to help the kids." The king stopped the arguments with a low, rumbling growl. "Tradition means nothing if my children die," he said. "If human methods work, then we will learn them." The elders bowed their heads. The decision was final. Teaching the dragon chef's Forsk, the head chef, approached Evan slowly. His pride still hurt, but respect now lived beside it. "Human," Vorsk said with a sigh. "Teach me how you made this." "Soft miracle. A bit. Me teach you." "Yes," Vorsk said. "And teach the others as well. The hatchlings need more meals. Many meals." Ravkar stepped forward, forcing a smile. "Yes, human. Teach us. We are eager to learn." But his eyes glowed with secret anger. Evan didn't notice the hidden threat. He simply nodded. "All right. We start with the basics." The kitchen shifted. The dragons gathered around him, their huge bodies surrounding his small form like mountains circling a pebble. Evan stood on a stack of boxes to reach the counter. He began showing them how to chop vegetables softly, how to check the temperature gently, how to stir without bursting flames everywhere. Vorsk tried hard, but his claws were too large. He smashed the vegetables completely. Evan laughed. "It's okay. Try cutting smaller." A few dragons grumbled. Others snickered. Even the king chuckled from the corner. But Ravkar watched silently, waiting for the moment he could twist this situation in his favor. The moment of truth, when the next meal was ready. The hatchlings waited eagerly. Their tails wagged. Their wings fluttered. They chirped loudly, tiny dragon voices, full of life. Evan placed the bowls down again. All the chefs held their breath. One by one, the hatchlings ate. Every bowl emptied. Every child smiled. The palace erupted in joy. Dragons cheered. Servants clapped. Elders bowed their heads in thanks. But the most powerful moment came when the blue-scaled much hit. Girl looked up at Evan and said her first clear word. Mo. More. The entire palace froze. A dragon hatchling had spoken her first word to a human. The king's eyes widened. It felt like history changed in that single moment. He stepped forward, voice deep and emotional. Human Evan, from this moment forward, you are not a visitor in my palace. Evan swallowed nervously. You are a guardian of the hatchlings, a protector of their future. Gasps echoed across the hall. The human bowed awkwardly. The hatchlings chirped happily around him, and in the shadows, Ravkar's jealousy turned into something darker, something dangerous, something that would soon put everyone at risk. The next morning, the palace felt different. The halls, once filled with worry and fear, now echoed with tiny chirps and happy growls. The dragon hatchlings were awake early, stumbling out of their sleeping chambers and flapping their small wings with excitement. Their eyes shone brightly again. Their tails wagged like little excited flames. All of them were waiting for one thing. Their human cook, Evan, when he walked into the kitchen. The little dragons rushed toward him like a group of playful puppies. One climbed onto his leg, another circled him, and two more stretched their wings proudly, as if welcoming back a hero. The dragon chefs watched this with mixed feelings. Some were amazed. Some were jealous. Some felt respect rising slowly, and one Ravkar felt nothing but burning hatred. Evan picked up the blue-scaled hatchling gently. Good morning, he said with a warm smile. You hungry again? The hatchlings all chirped at once. Yes, yes, Evan laughed. I'll start cooking. But as he turned toward the kitchen counter, Vorsk blocked his path. For a moment, Evan thought the chef was angry again. But instead, Vorsk bowed deeply, respectfully. Human Evan, he said loudly. Thank you. You saved the future of our clan. Evan stood frozen. He had never seen a dragon bow before. Thank you, he said awkwardly. Vorsk stepped aside and gestured toward the cooking station. This is your place now. The chefs whispered among themselves. The human has a place in the royal kitchen. He stands where only masters stand. Is this even allowed? But before anyone could argue, the king stepped inside, filling the room with his huge presence. It is allowed, the king said. Today, the human becomes the royal cook for the hatchlings. Gasps filled the room. A human? Given a royal position. In a dragon kingdom, this had never happened before in any clan, in any age, in any galaxy. Evan bowed respectfully. He didn't want power. He didn't want praise. He only wanted the children to stay healthy. But he knew this role came with responsibility and danger. The king placed a hand over his heart. Teach our chefs what the children need, and teach them the human way not to replace our traditions, but to save our future. Evan nodded. I'll try my best. Training begins. The dragon chefs lined up, some proud, some annoyed, most confused. Evan showed them again how to wash vegetables gently. Vorsk did well. The others? Not so much. One chef accidentally smashed the vegetables. Another burned them instantly. One set an entire table on fire. Evan sighed. Okay, let's try again slowly this time. Even the king chuckled from the corner. Ravkar, however, did not laugh. He stood far away, refusing to participate. His eyes were angry, sharp, full of resentment. Dotament noticed but didn't push him. If he wants to learn later, I'll help him, Evan whispered. But Ravkar was not interested in learning. He was interested in destroying. Sabotage begins as the chefs practiced. Ravkar quietly slipped behind the cooking area. He opened the storage boxes. Inside were the ingredients Evan used: soft grains, simple vegetables, gentle spices. He smirked. "These plain things make the hatchlings love him," he muttered. "Then let the children suffer without them." Carefully, silently, he pushed the crates toward the edge of the shelf. 1 tap, 2 taps. 3 taps, crash. The crates fell and shattered on the floor. The entire kitchen jerked in shock. Evan rushed forward. Vegetables and grain were scattered across the stone tiles. The precious soft ingredients, ready rare in the palace, were ruined. "Oh no," Evan whispered. This was all we had for the day. The hatchlings cried in confusion, sensing something was wrong. Vorsk stared at the mess. "Who did this?" He growled. No one spoke. Ravkar stepped forward with fake innocence. "Perhaps the humans stacked them poorly. His hands are small. His balance is weak." Some dragons nodded. Evan felt heat rise in his chest. He wanted to defend himself, but he stayed calm. "It's fine," he said softly. "We can still make something. Let me try." He looked around, searching for anything usable: small pieces of vegetables still clean on top, untouched grains remaining near the back, leftover broth from yesterday. It wasn't much, but it was enough. He gathered everything, washed it carefully, and began cooking again. The dragons watched. Surprised by his patience, Vorsk whispered. "He does not give up," the king whispered back. "That is why the children trust him." When Evan finished the meal, he placed the bowls down. The hatchlings sniffed, then happily ate every bite. The palace sighed in relief again. But Ravkar's face twisted with anger. "Even when I destroy everything, he still wins," he growled. His jealousy had become something darker, something dangerous, something that would soon put everyone at risk. The palace had begun to change. The halls were brighter, the hatchlings healthier, and the elders calmer. Evan's gentle meals had restored life to the royal family. Every morning, the children gathered around him, chirping happily as he cooked. Even Vorsk, once full of pride, now followed Evan's instructions with respect. But while the palace grew warmer, one heart grew darker, or his jealousy had become poison. Every time he saw the hatchlings run toward Evan, his claws tightened. Every time Vorsk praised Evan's cooking, Ravkar's wings twitched angrily. And every time the king spoke kindly to the human, Ravkar felt something break inside him. He told himself, dragons should never depend on humans. I must protect our pride. But in truth, it wasn't pride he wanted to protect. It was his ego, and ego can be dangerous. A quiet plan late one night, when the fires in the palace were dim and most dragons were asleep, Ravkar returned to the kitchen. The shadows stretched across the floor. The air smelled faintly of herbs. Evan's herbs. Ravkar's eyes narrowed. On the counter sat a small jar of earth spices. Evan had used it earlier that day to make a gentle broth. The hatchlings loved it. The scent still floated in the air, soft, warm, comforting. Ravkar hated it. He picked up the jar slowly, feeling its light weight. "This little human bottle," he whispered, "has more power than me." No, not anymore. Then he opened the lid and poured the entire jar into the trash fire. The flames swallowed it instantly. Ravkar hissed with satisfaction. This is only the beginning. Morning troubled the next morning. Evan woke early, as usual. He washed his hands, stretched his arms, and walked into the kitchen, ready to cook breakfast for the hatchlings. He smiled when he saw Vorsk already preparing the vegetables. "Morning, Vorsk," Evan said. "Morning, human," Vorsk replied with a rare, warm tone. "Let us begin." Evan looked around. Something felt strange. "Where's the earth spice jar?" Vorsk frowned. "I do not know. It was here last night." Evan searched every shelf, every corner. Every drawer gone, He didn't want to worry the children. So he sighed softly and began cooking without it. But when the hatchlings tasted the breakfast, something changed. They paused, they chewed slowly. Their eyes dimmed a little. They ate, but not happily, not excitedly. Not like before, the king noticed immediately. "Something is missing," he said. Evan nodded. "Yes, the spice jar. Someone took it." The room fell silent. Ravkar pretended to look shocked. Who would do such a thing? Evan looked at him for a moment, but didn't accuse him. Humans were careful with blame, but the hatchlings, they knew. They sniffed the air. Their eyes narrowed. Their wings flared. Tiny growls escaped their throats. The blue-scaled hatchling walked straight to Ravkar and hissed softly. The king's eyes widened. She rarely reacts this way. Something is wrong. Ravkar stepped back. They are confused. They do not know what they smell. But the children gathered around Ravkar, growling louder. Their instincts sensed his betrayal. Vorsk stared in shock. "Ravkar, did you do something?" Ravkar panicked. "No, I would never." But guilt was already visible in his trembling wings. The investigation, the king ordered the guards. Search the kitchen. The dragons spread out quickly, sniffing the shelves, checking the corners, scanning the floors. One guard found the ashes in the trash fire. Something sparkled inside, tiny traces of earth spices. The guard sniffed. "This smells like the missing jar." Another guard added, "And the fire was used late last night." Ravkar's face cracked with fear. That proves nothing." But the guards stepped closer. Surrounding him, Vorsk's voice rumbled with anger. "Why would you destroy the ingredients that saved the hatchlings?" Ravkar shouted. "Because dragons should not depend on humans. We are strong. We are powerful. And he pointed at Evan, is making us weak." Silence filled the room like a cold wind. Then the king spoke, voice deep and shaking with fury. "Strength is not cruelty. Power is not pride. A dragon who harms children is no dragon at all." Ravkar dropped to his knees. "I only wanted to protect our traditions," the king growled. "Tradition means nothing if it hurts the young." He motioned to the guards. "Remove him." The hatchlings chirped loudly as Ravkar was taken away. Some even flapped their wings as if celebrating. Evan felt a pang of sadness. I didn't want him punished like that. But Vorsk shook his head. He endangered the children. That cannot be forgiven. A new responsibility. The king turned to Evan. "Human, Evan, your food saved my children. Your patience exposed the traitor. And your heart has protected this palace more than you know." He looked at the hatchlings, who were now curled around Evan's legs for comfort. From this moment, the human is no longer just a cook. Everyone stared. The king continued, "He is a guardian of the royal hatchlings. And he will be honored as a member of the palace." Evan stood speechless. The hatchlings chirped happily, their way of cheering and deep inside the palace walls. A new story was forming. A story of trust. A story of unity. A story that would soon spread across the galaxy. But danger was not over yet. Something far greater was waiting just beyond the horizon. The morning after Ravkar's removal, the atmosphere inside the palace felt heavier than before. The betrayal had shaken everyone. Even though the hatchlings were safe, the memory of danger still lingered. Elders walked silently. Guards stood stiff with worry. The king himself looked tired, as if carrying the weight of two worlds. Evan sensed this heaviness the moment he stepped into the kitchen. Even the fires burned lower, as if they too were waiting for something to change. The hatchlings, however, seemed determined to lift the mood. They greeted Evan with happy chirps, climbing onto his legs, wings fluttering. Their pure innocence reminded everyone why they fought so hard to protect them. Vorsk approached Evan. His massive form looked smaller today, humbled by the past day's events. "Human Evan," he said with a slow breath. "I think today must be different." Evan nodded. "I know. Everyone is still tense." "Yes," Vorsk agreed. "The palace needs healing. Not just the hatchlings. All of us." Evan thought for a moment, then smiled softly. "Then let's cook something for everyone. Not just the children, everyone in the palace." Vorsk looked surprised, then thoughtful, then hopeful. "A meal to bring unity," he said. "Exactly," Evan replied. "A lunch the whole palace can share." Preparation for the feast soon. The kitchen buzzed with activity. Evan guided the chefs gently but firmly. He showed them how to prepare large pots of soft broth, Earth-style, grain dishes, warm vegetable stews, and gentle meats cut into safe, small pieces. The dragons worked differently now. No anger, no pride, no rushing. Instead, they moved with patience and cooperation, learning the human rhythm of cooking. Even the elders entered the kitchen to help wash vegetables. Guards helped carry pots. Servants arranged tables across the main hall. The palace, which once felt tense and divided, now moved like one living body with one purpose. The hatchling sat near Evan, watching the food come together. The blue-scaled hatchling nuzzled his arm as if thanking him before the meal even began. "You little troublemaker," Evan laughed softly. "You're the one who started all of this." She chirped proudly and rested on his foot. The great lunch, when the meal was ready, dragons of all ranks gathered in the grand dining hall. The hall glowed with warm firelight. Long tables were filled with steaming bowls and plates of food, simple dishes. Yes, but made with care, comfort, and unity. Even the king seemed emotional as he approached the table. Vorsk stood beside Evan and announced loudly, "Today, we do not eat as chefs and servants, or elders and guards, or dragons and human. Today, we eat as one family." A deep murmur of agreement flowed through the hall. Evan carried the first large bowl to the hatchlings. They chirped excitedly and began eating immediately. Their joy spread through the room like sunlight. The king stepped forward and took a bowl for himself. He tasted it slowly, then closed his eyes. "This," he whispered, "is peace." The hall erupted with soft growls of approval. Dragons began eating carefully, savoring the simple flavors they once considered too plain. For the first time, they understood why the hatchlings loved it. The elders felt warmth they had forgotten for decades. Guards relaxed their tense shoulders. Servants laughed softly for the first time in days. This meal did not just fill stomachs. It filled hearts. A new bond is born. The king stood again and raised his hand. The hall grew silent. "Today," he said, "a human saved not only my children, but all of us." He looked directly at Evan. "You healed our young. You exposed betrayal. You taught us gentleness. And you reminded us that strength is not only in flame, but also in kindness." Evan blushed, unsure how to react. The king continued, voice deep and proud. "From this day forward, you are a member of the royal family, not by blood, but by honor." Gasps echoed across the hall. Evan's eyes widened. "I don't know what to say." "You don't need to," the king said. "You have already spoken through your actions." The hatchlings surrounded Evan, nuzzling him, climbing onto him, chirping happily. The entire hall watched as the future of the dragon clan embraced the human as one of their own. A legend begins as. The feast continued. Stories began spreading across the palace. The human saved the hatchlings. He stood against betrayal. He cooked a meal that united the entire clan. Soon, these stories traveled beyond the palace walls to nearby dragon colonies, to alien worlds, even to human regions across the galaxy. People began whispering a new legend. The human who brought peace with a bowl of soup. Evan never asked for glory. He only wanted the children safe. But the universe had a way of turning simple acts into unforgettable legends. And so, on that day, in a hall filled with laughter, warmth, and the smell of gentle human cooking, a bond was formed. A clan was changed, and one human became a hero among dragons.